Hello my dear students, welcome to our channel Rajesh Biology and I am Rajesh MSc Zoology. Today our topic is extra-embryonic membranes. First of all, why these are called extra-embryonic membranes? You know, as like all the organisms, humans also start their life in the aquatic medium only. When we are in the mother's womb, our body, our embryonic body is covered by a amniotic cavity. In that amniotic fluid is there. So as like all the organisms, we also start our life in the aquatic medium. Why? Because to prevent the desiccation and to prevent the mechanical shocks from the external surfaces to the embryo, and for the exchange of gases, for the exchange of nutrients, elimination of nitrogenous waste materials. When we are in the mother's womb, we need some special membranes, and all these membranes present outside the embryo. That's why they are called what? Extra-embryonic membranes. If they are present inside, they are internal membranes, they are called. But these membranes are present outside the embryo. That's why they are called what? Extra-embryonic membranes. What are the functions of extra-embryonic membranes? The functions of extra-embryonic membranes are it prevents the desiccation of the embryo, and it protects the embryo from this mechanical shocks, and it helps in the exchange of elimination of nitrogenous waste material and exchange of gases, exchange of the absorption of the nutrients, and all these are the functions of extra-embryonic membranes. So first I'll let you know the extra-embryonic membranes one by one based on their formation. First, amniotic cavity is formed. Amniotic cavity, amnion. I'll write here the extra-embryonic membranes names in one order based on the time of formation. Amnion. In this class, I am going to explain how the amniotic cavity is formed, function of the amniotic cavity, from where it is formed. Next embryonic membrane is yolk sac. Second one is yolk sac. Second extra-embryonic membrane, yolk sac, how it is formed and the function of the yolk sac. I think you already know the name yolk material in hen egg. Okay, so when compared with the remaining amniotes, you know the word amniotes, the organisms which lay eggs with the amniotic cavity, they are called amniotes. Before the reptiles, there is no amniotic membrane, only yolk sac is there, amniotic cavity is not there before the reptiles, birds and mammals only has this type of amniotic cavity. Reptiles, birds and mammals are called amniotes. Second extra-embryonic membrane is yolk sac. The third extra-embryonic membrane name is chorion. Chorion is a third extra-embryonic membrane, and the fourth extra-embryonic membrane is Allantois. This is the order: amnion, yolk sac, chorion and Allantois. Okay, so we will start from the beginning, like at the time of the implantation on the 6th day. From that day we will start step by step from where these four membranes are formed and how they are developed. If you observe this diagram here, just draw an implantation diagram. I already explained how the implantation takes place. It is there in the previous class. After implantation, the outer trophoblast cells produce the villi. Outer trophoblast cells produce what? A villi, which helps in the invagination of the embryo into the endometrium. This is trophoblastic villi, and it is the inner cell mass. After implantation, completion of the implantation, this trophoblast differentiated into two types. One is syncytiotrophoblast. One is syncytiotrophoblast, another one is cytotrophoblast. Already we all completed all these things. Okay, so I'm not going to detailedly explain about the trophoblast. Now I'm focusing on the inner cell mass, from where the embryo and embryonic membranes are developed. This is the embryonic or inner cell mass. It is the embryonic proper or embryonic cell mass or inner cell mass. Okay, it is the epiblast cells. First of all, these are the inner cell mass. Later it get divided into two layers. That is what? Epiblast, which is close to the villi, and below that, beneath that, there is a hypoblast. Now it is called bilaminar embryonic disc. We already completed this, right? So when it is formed like a bilaminar embryonic disc, epiblast has some blastula cells, like hypoblast is replaced by the endoderm. Mesoderm is also derived from the epiblast. Remaining cells are called ectoderm. Like that we completed how the migration takes place, how the gastrulation takes place, we completed. So this epiblast has some amnioblast cells. What are they are called? Amnioblast cells. These amnioblast cells are derived from the epiblast. Amnioblast cells are derived from where? Epiblast. This epiblast derives amnioblast cells and it moves away from this cytotrophoblast. When it is moving like this, automatically some cavity is formed like this. And these are, which lines the cytotrophoblast. This is the amnioblast cells, and the cavity which developed, this cavity is called amniotic cavity or amnion. This is called what? Amnion or amniotic cavity. In this amniotic cavity, water is there, some liquid is there. The liquid is called amniotic fluid, which keeps the embryo moisture and which protects the embryo from the external mechanical shocks, and which prevents the desiccation. Okay, so that is the amniotic fluid. First extra-embryonic membrane is this one. Later, if you observe this hypoblast, still it is bilaminar embryonic disc only. This hypoblast is proliferate, and it is also covers the entire the blastula with a cavity, with a great cavity. This cavity is called yolk sac. So before the trilaminar embryonic disc, before the gastrulation, these two extra-embryonic membranes are developed. It is amnion, it is yolk sac. It is actually called primitive yolk sac. What it is called? Primitive. So later also another yolk sac is developed. First it is the primitive yolk sac and it is the amnion. Okay. Now what happens? Just revise once the previous video, the previous class. That is what? In the bilaminar embryonic disc, there is a primitive strike and a primitive node is formed. The epiblast cells migrate through the primitive streak and they replace the hypoblast, forms the endoderm, and they takes place between the endoderm and epiblast. They becomes the mesoderm. Here you can observe a red color line. This is what? A mesoderm. That means it is the gastrula now. It is the gastrula now. Okay. Whenever the mesoderm is formed, the mesoderm get distributed in all the directions. It distributes all the directions and it occupies the space within this embryo, within this blastula, within this gastrula. It occupies the space. So many mesodermal cells occupy the space between the cytotrophoblast and this internal embryonic membranes. This space is covered by, is filled by the so many mesodermal cells, and it is actually the extra-embryonic mesoderm. What it is called? It is extra-embryonic mesoderm. It is extra-embryonic mesoderm because it is present outside the embryo. So it is the extra-embryonic mesoderm. Okay. Now later, gradually this amniotic cavity increases in the space and it gets fold like this. When it is fold, this yolk sac enter into this amniotic cavity along with the mesoderm. Along with the mesoderm. So if you observe this, it is the ectoderm, it is the amniotic cavity. Amniotic cavity covers a part of ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm also. This is the neck portion of the yolk sac, the stalk of the yolk sac. So automatically this endoderm from where the yolk sac develops, and the mesoderm and the ectoderm from where the amnion cavity is developed. All these are covered by this amniotic cavity, and it get folded like this. So it is the embryo with ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. This endoderm is going to forms a stalk like structure from where the yolk sac is developed. So if you observe this, it is act like a future gut, embryonic gut it is. Okay, and the musculature and everything is developed from this mesoderm, and all this is covered by the ectoderm, and from the ectoderm only there is a amniotic cavity which covers all these three germ layers, and it develops like this. So this embryo, this is the embryo, and embryo is covered by the amniotic cavity. From there is a internal gut, embryonic gut. From the gut, one sac comes out, that is the yolk sac. Like these two extra embryonic membranes are there. You know, yolk sac of the remaining organisms like birds or the reptiles, some mammals also, other than the monkeys, other than some apes, some mammals also, yolk sac is functional, like the egg laying mammals. In that type of mammals, yolk sac is functional. That means it stores some nutrients, and from that yolk sac only the nutrients are enter into the developing embryo. But in placentals, like in our human beings, the yolk sac is not functional. Okay, it is formed, but in this the nutrients are not stored because the nutrients are supplied through the placenta. So here in human beings, the yolk sac is the non-functional thing. Okay, so here it is the two extra-embryonic membranes, and their origins and their functions are completed. Amniotic cavity from the ectoderm, yolk sac from the endoderm, from the gut. Amniotic cavity to protect, yolk sac is to give the nutrients, but it is non-functional in the human beings. Next, third one, how chorion is formed. You know, within the extra-embryonic mesoderm, a cavity is developed. Within the extra-embryonic membrane, extra-embryonic mesoderm, a cavity is developed, and that cavity is look like this. The cavity is look like this. So here if you observe, it is the somatic mesoderm. The extra-embryonic mesoderm is okay, and later so many changes are takes place. If you observe the mesoderm differentiation class, in that I told you, mesoderm is divided into three parts. That is the paraxial mesoderm, intermediate mesoderm and lateral mesoderm. Lateral mesoderm splits, and one is somatic pleura, another one is splanchnoplura. This somatic pleura is covers in all the directions. It occupies all the directions like this. It is a somatic mesoderm. Of course, a cavity is formed, but here the cavity is not formed. That is called the stalk. And later it developed into the umbilical cord. I'll let you know later. Okay. So cavity is developed within the mesoderm. When the cavity is formed, the trophoblast, cytotrophoblast, lined by the somatic mesoderm, somatic pleura. This is what? Somatic pleura. The somatic pleura plus cytotrophoblast. Cytotrophoblast. The somatic flora and cytotrophoblast together called what? Chorion. Chorion means cytotrophoblast plus somatic flora. Cytotrophoblast, somatic flora together called what? Chorion. And this chorion becomes it gives vascular structures. It get proliferated, the chorionic cells, whenever the cavity formed, whenever the chorionic membrane formed. Chorionic membrane formed means what? Actually it is like this, cytotrophoblast. But mesoderm cells forming, and later the cavity is formed. Because of the cavity, the cytotrophoblast lined by a layer of somatoflora. So the somatoflora and cytotrophoblast together called chorion. That's why now this cavity is called chorionic cavity. It is called what? Chorionic cavity. And chorionic flora, chorionic placenta. The placenta is called chorionic placenta, and the cavity is called chorionic cavity. Chorion means cytotrophoblast plus somatoflora together called what? Chorion. Okay, and these chorionic layers get proliferated, and they forms the villi, chorionic villi. They forms the villi like this. If you observe here, it is the amnion, it is the gut. Okay, and here these two layers becomes the chorion, and these two layers together forms this type of villi like this. Villi. It participates in the formation of the placenta. It participates in the formation of placenta. That's why it is called chorionic placenta. Placenta means it is a functional connection between maternal tissue and fetus tissue. That means there is a extra, that mother tissue is there, uterine tissue is there, and the fetus tissue is also there, together called placenta. This fetal part placenta is formed by the chorion. That's why it is called chorionic placenta. And chorion, if you observe, it is made up of the cytotrophoblast and this somatic flora together called the chorion. Okay, all these three are good. From where the Allantois is formed. After all this extra-embryonic membrane formation, in a late manner, the Allantois is get evaginated. It get evaginated from the, if you observe here, from the hind gut. From the hind gut, it is a gut, and from the actually this gut is formed from this yolk sac only. It is a gut. Okay, from this gut only, but hind gut, like from the anus. If yolk sac connected to the mouth, Allantois is connected from the, developed from the anus. So from the hind gut, there is another extra-embryonic membrane develops to store the nitrogenous waste materials. To store nitrogenous waste materials, it developed from the hind gut. Hind gut. So if you observe this, if it is the cephalic end, it is the caudal end. From the cephalic end, yolk sac I draw. From the caudal end, one extra-embryonic membrane comes out. This is the Allantois. Allantois not only storing of nitrogenous waste. The function of the Allantois is to store the nitrogenous waste. Not only that, this Allantois continue its development, and it moves up to the chorion in participation of formation of the placenta. So it develops like this up to the chorion, where the chorion and Allantois communicate with one another. Here it is more vascularized. More vascularized portion of the placenta is where the Allantois and the chorion communicate together. So Allantois is also participate in the formation of the fetal part of placenta. Fetal part of placenta is formed by chorion and allantoin. Where the chorion and allantois are together, there is more vascularized means more blood vessels are there. That's why it is called chorioallantoic placenta. Chorioallantoic placenta. Allantois is participate in the formation of the placenta, fetal part of the placenta, and it stores the nitrogenous waste materials. So simply, these are the three these are the three primary germ layers. From the ectoderm, amniotic cavity is developed. From the endoderm, yolk sac is developed. This is called primitive yolk sac. Later, whenever it becomes a mesodermal layer and the chorionic cavity develops, at the time of chorionic cavity formation, the primitive yolk sac converted into the secondary yolk sac, main functional yolk sac, and it is a not functional yolk sac. So yolk sac is developed from the endoderm. From the endoderm gut only, there is a allantois, and this mesoderm in all the directions spreads, and it forms what? Chorion. Okay. Now, if you observe this diagram in a clear manner, just I would like to end this topic with a very interesting thing. Okay, that is the cytotrophoblast, somatopleura, together called what? Chorion. Chorion is the cytotrophoblast and somatopleura. Okay, and if you observe the yolk sac is formed from the endoderm. So endoderm, yolk sac is endoderm. You know, endoderm is lined by the splanchnoplura. So splanchnoplura and some amount of somatic pleura. Somato, splanchno and endoderm together form the yolk sac. But allantois is purely endoderm and splanchnoplura. Endoderm and splanchnoplura only together forms the allantois. Simple. Amnion, it is completely developed from the epiblast, amnioblast cells of the epiblast, and it covers all the extra-embryonic membranes, not extra-embryonic membranes, it covers all the embryonic membranes, that is amnion. Come to the yolk sac is formed from the gut and foregut particularly, and it is from the endoderm. It is lined by the endoderm is lined by the splanchnoplura and the somatic pleura. Come to the chorion is cytotrophoblast and the somatic pleura, mesoderm, together form what? Chorion, which forms the placenta. Okay, allantois is purely from the endoderm and the splanchnoplura and endoderm. Wherever the allantois is connected with the chorion, at that place it becomes more vascular and it participates in the formation of fetal part of placenta, and main function is to store the waste materials. So this is about the 4 extra embryonic membranes. In next class we will discuss about the placenta formation and the placenta functions. Okay, thank you.